Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 6:30 p.m. This is the board workshop being held on March 23rd, 2021. We have a quorum with all members present. We will review the agenda items from the regular meeting being held on March 25th, 2021. Dr. Randall, I will turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. The first agenda item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the instructional materials recommended by the District Instructional Materials Adoption Committee for use in pre-kindergarten classrooms in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District.
I have a few questions. Did you need to make the announcement? Let me leave.
I do it whenever you leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I was just curious, as far as the vendors.
Yes, ma'am.
Who were the other vendors that
So-
participated?
There were, let me give you the list. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total. So Benchmark Education, Frog Street Press, Kaplan Early Learning, Robert Leslie Publishing, Savas Learning, which is Pearson, Scholastic, and then Teaching Strategies.
Okay. I'm just curious, have we been using Frog Street?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you explain the change, or how did that come about?
So we consider all of the new adoption publishers equally. There's 2 different rubrics that the committee uses. And by committee, I mean all the teachers that teach either pre-K, in this case, or early childhood special education. And they look at all the vendors for both content and usability. And so they voted, and they voted for to move forward with Scholastic.
Okay. When I was reading this, that parents were also included
Yes,
and
ma'am.
the general community, right?
In the virtual, they were given the option during the virtual fair that we had in January, and we published notification of all that and shared out the links for all of the online resources that were available.
Did you have any parents
Submit,
submit?
no ma'am,
How about the community?
no ma'am.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing it up, because I know y'all change programs, but I'm curious, I guess now that I'm gonna be leaving, Frog Street y'all have used for how many years, or about?
I'm not sure when the last adoption was, I'd have to go back and look.
Okay. Not having any community input, I know we had some discussions a few years ago that if anything would come up that might be of interest to, child care centers, or were considered community, that we would be notified of maybe if we had anything to submit to them. Were we notified?
Just the public, general public was notified.
How is that done?
Through social media channels and through the newspaper for the vendor fair that was in January. Was also on the district website for the month of January.
Okay. I would just make a suggestion, because we've discussed this before, and I know y'all had a list, and y'all had sent us some information, like enrollment, so we could send it to our parents, that maybe y'all would look into doing that, notifying us of something that we maybe have an interest in. TEA has been working on partnership for the last 3 or 4 years with the outside area, outside community. And so far, we haven't been very successful in that program. And I know they're coming back up as a discussion about including the community. And I just wanted to bring that up, because I think in the future, it would be beneficial to everybody, because having pre-K full day now, we basically are not able to service all of the children. and y'all have access to all these children outside of the district. And TEA has a program where you'll actually be receiving money for the participation. And I don't, am I correct about that? I think Ms. Mosigi.
So,
And I'm getting a little bit beyond all of this. I'll get to the question about, I'm trying to understand why y'all are changing a program, how often you do it, and for what purpose. Because, like for me, right now, we use Frog Street, we use CLI, and this program that I'm reading about is very similar to what Frog Street has. So I'm curious as to where did we get to the point that we felt like it needed to be changed?
so there's an IMA schedule, an instructional materials adoption schedule that TEA publishes, and we have to follow that adoption process. And so regardless of where we would move forward, we would have to adopt new resources. And so even if we continued with Frog Street, it would have to be the newest version of Frog Street and all the new pieces that have been published. We could not continue
Right.
because our old version doesn't match the new pre-K guidelines and curriculum. So when curriculum is revised at the state level, we adopt new materials that are aligned to the new state curriculum.
I believe, Ms. Kaminsky, we also put in the board agenda item, I think it was in January, the list of committee members with
Right.
the committee members that were going to be part of this. This is a normal cycle for the state of Texas to evaluate resources because they become outdated. And so at that time of adoption, a group of teachers who are going to be in charge of implementing it at that tier 1 level every day are going to be the ones that are going to be really making those decisions, and they will make the decisions on what they feel is best to implement at their classroom level for them.
Okay.
Ms.
Would-
Kaminsky, can I ask it, so
Okay.
are you
sorry.
curious if there's any notes about why they made the change? Is there any information that was shared from the committee?
The general impression is because of the authentic text, the current cultural relevancy of the new resources. They like Scholastic's look and feel, very user-friendly. We have specific notes from every teacher on every campus that we could absolutely get for you.
This curriculum that we're going to buy or purchase, is that, when we buy the curriculum, we usually have all the materials,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's the books, the cards, the numbers, all of that, basically. When y'all finish with it, when that program is gone, what do y'all do with all that material?
When it's out of adoption, it depends on what it is. So if it's readers, that even though the whole program is out of adoption, the leveled readers would still be applicable. We continue to use them as they can be used. If it's resources that are outdated and no longer align with the curriculum, then they're sent to the warehouse for auction or for destruction.
Okay. The cost, is this cheaper, or is this just basically the same price as Frog Street was?
So it's apples to oranges in that we would have to look at what Frog Street costs now, because if we were going to use Frog Street, we would have to buy new curriculum. We haven't explored any cost and resources because we haven't had approval from you all to move forward with that. When we're looking at curriculum and evaluating it, we're looking at it from an instructional perspective and not a cost perspective. What's the best program to meet our instructional need? And then we go back to the vendor, and there's lots of options that we can or may or may not use depending on the cost.
So we would have had to purchase a new curriculum regardless of what we
Yes.
chose, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
Gotcha, but it'd be
Right.
good to get those notes.
I think it would, because in my field of work, we've used Frog Street, and they do send updated materials to us. But my concern is that if we buy a new program, just like we do other programs, and it doesn't work, or the teachers don't buy into it, is it beneficial? So that's why I was wanting to see the comments of what are they looking at, because Frog Street's been very, very good. And CLI, it
C-
looks, y'all use that program too, correct?
Yes, ma'am, and we will continue to use
So
CLI.
you're gonna have two programs or two curriculums.
So we use CLI for assessment and then intervention based on the assessment data.
I think we need to also be clear that the TEKS are our curriculum, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. And the resources that we use help support to teach the curriculum that is already identified by the state of Texas. So those content strands and what we're expected to teach do not change. The resources that we utilize to teach the state curriculum can change, and a group of teachers based upon practitioners in a committee would make the decision on the resource that they would utilize.
And I think what's important is that the book that you're getting is not the curriculum. That was the most important statement there. It is used to support the curriculum.
We have our own LCISD
Right,
curriculum.
that's why I was wanting to know the cost, variance or the difference between the two programs. Because basically, all the 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-old curriculum and programs are basically all the same. It depends on the teacher and how they buy into it and to what extent do they use that material.
And the teacher choices, the first top two, were first Scholastic and second Benchmark Education. Those were the two top vote earners.
So you can send out the notes on that maybe tomorrow?
Yes, I mean,
are they already in
it's a packet.
It
We can
is not-
scan and
it's-
send
I
it.
was oh, okay.
Every
Yeah.
teacher that evaluated would have looked at all 7 of those vendors.
I'm not here to say, to correct it. My understanding was that I knew Frog Street was a good program. It's been very successful for years and years, and I also know that they update all the time. And I was just curious because from my experience with Scholastic has not been that good as far as giving the material. The bottom line is you're just buying the curriculum part of it.
We're not buying, we have our own LCISD curriculum. So we're buying, that's based on pre-K guidelines, and we're buying the instructional materials to support that pre-K curriculum.
Okay, describe instructional materials.
So it could be, for pre-K, it's going to include things like leveled readers, station cards, big books, manipulatives. It's going to include all of those pieces. Pre-K, as you know, is very hands-on. So it's going to include all of those components that support the LCISD curriculum.
And I think one of the things that we may be able to do is to take a look at, because that information that you're asking for, you're going to have to spend some time going through it to teach about it. It's not just the 1 or 2 or 3 pages. That we can take a look at a way of pulling something together that ultimately will give you a sense of what the teachers identified as their recommendation. I think maybe what you might be thinking is, all right, there was a breakdown 49, 51%. Was it overwhelmingly they selected Scholastic? Those are the types of things that may be able to help you in determining whether you feel comfortable with the recommendation.
It just surprised me that y'all have been using Frog Street, right, for so long. And what I hear now is they weren't even in the top 2.
The biggest.
So that was surprising to me.
A couple of things happen when that occurs. Sometimes the companies don't keep up. And ultimately, when they have to compete with another group that has been more progressive, they don't necessarily, they aren't accepted by the teachers the next time around. That's a possibility. Goodness gracious, there have been a number of books since I've been around
Imagine.
that were, and then they weren't accepted later on by the committee. So I think that if we could pull some information together that could help the board to kind of understand exactly the process, because at the end of the day, the individuals that vote on this are the ones who use it day in and day out in the classroom. This is not an administrator. These guys aren't the ones making that decision. And it's the teachers that are making the decision.
None of the district level staff or administrative staff votes. It's only the teachers, and there's a vote per campus.
And there was no input from the parents?
They-
Because, I mean, they had
did not
the
participate.
ability, but they didn't do
Yes,
it.
that's correct.
I didn't write it down, but she said something about this program was more culturally
Culturally
diverse,
relevant.
relevant.
And just current. You know, we want kiddos to be able to see themselves in what is available in literature, what is available in pictures. And the teachers felt like this was a current, more culturally responsive curriculum, more diverse in the way that the content was presented. And then very authentic text, very current. And I will tell you that, Ms. Kaminsky, that all of the vendors, the top 4 or 5 of the group of 7 were all good. And so there were finite reasons why campuses liked one over the other.
Okay, so we can get some of those.
Yes, we can prepare a summary for you.
I guess, basically, and I'm gonna just read this off, in my head was that all these programs are basically all designed for the infants, toddlers, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. They have the same things, they have the same, organization. And if you basically look at all of these, they all have the same basic ways of teaching or resources. So I was trying to figure out what made this one so much different. Why did the teachers go to this one? Because they are all basically the same.
Like I
So
said,
it's-
there's little differences between each
Okay.
one, and the teachers felt like this is the one overwhelmingly that they wanted to teach.
Well, I think I'm understanding that this cultural diversity
relevance.
probably is what pushed them over.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case, because until you get
The
the
notes.
information from what the teacher said,
Uh-huh.
because to make the assumption, she just said that cultural diversity was a part of it.
Right.
But I would be very careful about saying that's what pushed it over, because we really don't, with the exception of
Right.
the
But
feedback.
I just meant that that's what caught my ears, so.
Do you know if the teachers, because I remember when I was going through, I would pull parts of it and use it in my classroom just to see how it.
Yes, ma'am. Test drive it.
Test drive it, and I
Yes.
didn't know if some of the teachers probably did that.
Yes.
And when you do that, you can get a better handle.
Yes.
Because how it's faring with those kids.
Yes, so they would have had access to that from November all the
Okay.
way through the vote
So
in
more than
March.
likely, they did practice with
Yes.
some of those.
We could see some of those comments.
Yes,
Okay.
we'll pull together a summary and send it to you tomorrow.
Can you share with, I guess, the whole board?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you.
The next item, we ask that the board authorize the submission of a missed school day attendance waiver to the Texas Education Agency related to the closure of schools from February 15th through February 19th. The next item, we ask the board to approve the submission of an expedited waiver application to allow the district to request a maximum 2,100 additional operational minutes to dedicate to staff development activities during the 2021-22 school year.
Mr. Welch?
I have a question on that. We'll wait till Dr. Maxwell walks in. How are you, sir?
Doing well, how are you?
Good. Help me understand this. So it's 2,100 additional minutes, it's 35 hours.
Yes, sir. So the state requires us to have a certain number of minutes in our school year.
Right.
And so allowing to build in this waiver to allow our staff members to participate in high-quality professional development does not then account against the number of minutes that the state requires us to have. And so that also then protects the bad weather dates that are built into the to the calendar.
Is it staff development days?
Yes.
Waivers?
Yes.
That's what you're more used to hearing, is staff development days, waiver of staff development days for professional development. We're now putting in the minutes because the commissioner is doing everything based on minutes as opposed to days.
So if I understand this right, it's 75,600 minutes of the district has to be in session every year.
Yes, sir.
And of that, we are deducting 2,100 minutes for staff development.
That allows for staff
No, no.
development, but it's not deducting. Yeah. Brian? You wanna?
Out of the 75,600 minutes we have per year, we actually design a calendar that goes above and beyond that.
Gotcha.
Okay, and
That's
so
what I'm
what we
missing.
do is this, is that within that calendar, there's 4 half-days that are dedicated for teacher work days or teacher staff development. This allows us to use minutes for the staff development piece, so we don't lose the extra time we build into the calendar when we have a bad weather event.
Gotcha. That's the piece I was missing. I got it now.
So
Okay.
is this so that if we did have a bad weather event, we can still pay the teachers too and not have to,
That's
that's
a
big.
separate
that's separate?
issue.
That's the other.
That's the other one, okay.
This is
Because we
so-
want to make sure that, because some districts make the teachers
Right.
work to make up the days.
This is so that we don't have to bring back the students for that
Okay,
extra time.
all right, good.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the memorandum of understanding with Texas State Technical College for technical dual credit enrollment for Lamar CISD career and technical education students. B1, is that where we are?
B1.
B1.
Page 48.
Thank you,
Quite
thank you,
the
thank
jump.
you. We had so much there, I want to make sure I didn't miss
B1,
anything.
bingo.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to ratify the financial and investment reports.
I just wanted to say thank you for adding the extra columns. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds, wherever she is.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to consider approval of budget amendment request. The next item, we ask the board to approve 2021 historic site exemption qualifications for George Ranch Historical Park. And the next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the 2021 historic site exemption qualifications for Doris Yoder House.
Did the district, or, I'm sorry, did the board approve that last year?
They did last year, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Randall, is there anything that prevents these organizations from submitting a request for like 3 to 5 years as opposed to every year?
I think it's required to be done every year, but I'll let Ms. Ludwig.
It's annual requirement.
Yes.
Gotcha.
In case they change status.
Right.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve a resolution regarding the closure of schools from Monday, February 15, 2021 through Friday, February 19, 2021, and authorize the superintendent of schools to revise the calendar as necessary and authorize the payment of employees and long-term substitutes. That's what you.
That's the one. Gotta make sure those teachers,
It helps.
they've had a hard enough year.
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the underwriting firms listed below for the upcoming issuance of schoolhouse bonds. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the order authorizing the issuance of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District Unlimited Tax Schoolhouse Bond Series 2021. Okay. All right. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve an interlocal participation agreement to join the Region 3 Educational Service Center Purchasing Cooperative. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution proclaiming April 19th to 23rd, 2021 as Educational Administrative Professionals Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution proclaiming the week of April 5 through 9, 2021 as School Librarians Week in Lamar Consolidated Independent School District. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution proclaiming the week of April 19th to 23rd, 2021 as Public School Volunteer Appreciation Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District.
I do have a question on that. Out of curiosity, volunteering is great for our schools, and our schools need it. But we have a parent appreciation earlier in the year, isn't that right? Isn't there a day at
In
some point,
November?
a week that we appreciate the parents for volunteering, and now we're appreciating the non-parents for volunteering? Pretty much.
Yes, sir.
Carry on.
Okay.
We
We celebrate.
We like the volunteers.
Exactly, exactly.
And some of them have kept up even with everything going on.
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve second reading of Localized Policy Manual Update 116 and DB Local Employment Requirements and Restrictions. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees declare Mr. Zach Lambert, Mrs. Kay Danziger, Mrs. Mandy Bronzell, and Mr. Joe Hubernack elected to the Board of Trustees and cancel the Board of Trustees election for single-member District 1, 2, 3, and 6, set for May 1, 2021, in accordance with the Texas Education Code.
When was the last time that happened?
I remember the board members more than I can remember the actual year. But it has happened, I think, this is the third time since I've
you've
been here.
Okay.
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the deductive change order number 1 in the amount of $14,300 for the fuel tank storage replacement and authorize the board president to sign the deductive change order. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve ATC Group Services, LLC, for soil remediation testing for the fuel tank storage replacement in the total amount of $21,718 and authorize the board president to execute the agreement. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the Fort Bend County Municipal Utilities District MUD 162 water meter easement for the installation of water meter for the Dr. Thomas E. Randall High School and Harry Wright Junior High School complex and authorize the board president to execute the agreement documents. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve Winning Way Services for a third-party review and report for Maxine Phelan Elementary in the amount of $18,750. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the installation of network fiber connections for Fletcher Morgan Elementary School in the amount of $80,513 from PS Lightwave.
I have a question on that. Out of curiosity, is this $80,500, was it anticipated? Is it, maybe not anticipated is the right word. Was it factored in the cost pitched to the public in the 2017 bond?
Yes, sir.
It was.
All of our new facilities, we all.
So we have two data centers, one here in Roseburg, one at the Satellite Transportation Center in Fulshear. So the campuses will connect to one or the other of those to join our network.
So they're just bringing the physical line there,
Yes.
and then it's up to another company to do the internal
So the
connections?
internal cabling is done as part of the construction.
Construction.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
The general contractor does the.
Yeah, I would assume that. I didn't know if this company would do anything else. But
No.
I do have some other questions on, when we get to D, about some of those things, but I'll wait.
I'll be here.
I'm sure.
All right. Let's see. As part of continuous planning in response to COVID-19 pandemic, a review of the Lamar CISD COVID guidelines will be provided to the Board of Trustees.
Good evening, everyone. We have an update to our return to school guidelines for March 2021. Currently, we have 70% of our students who are back on campus and 30% who are still in the virtual learning modality. When you look specifically at our elementary students, 77% of those students are back on campus and 23% of those students are virtual. When you look at our secondary students in grades 6 through 12, 64% are back on campus and 36% are participating in virtual instruction. The latest numbers from our COVID-19 dashboard as of this morning have 18 district-wide cases. Student cases, there are 5, 2 at the high school level, 2 at the junior high level, and 1 at the elementary level, and we currently have 13 active staff cases in Lamar CISD. Wanted to touch again on exposure. So when a student or employee notifies the district that they have received a positive test result for COVID-19, the district will work with the employer or student to identify any of the individuals who might be at risk for exposure via our contact tracing process utilizing internal individuals in Lamar CISD. There are some factors that could affect the exposure determination. These would include masking, whether you have 1 or 2 masks on, ventilation in the area, the presence of dividers between or desk barriers, and then case symptomology. This could be, did the individual sneeze or things like that. When you look at student COVID-19 data, this is diagnosis information. 727 students were on campus when diagnosed. This is over the past year. So from March 6, 2020 until today, March 22nd, 2021. 333 students were not on campus whenever they were diagnosed. 70 were virtual students and they were not on campus when they reported their diagnosis. 13 were virtual students who were on campus for an extracurricular activity. 2 were attending a summer extracurricular practice, and 17 are diagnosed and not currently at school. I do want to point out when you see 727 were diagnosed while on campus, that doesn't mean that they contracted COVID-19 on campus. There is a 48-hour infectious period prior to any result. So if you get your test, it goes back, were you on a Lamar CISD campus, where that number comes from. More student COVID-19 data for quarantines. 3,548 students were quarantined due to exposure to other students in Lamar CISD. 255 students were quarantined due to exposure from staff, and 3 are quarantined and not currently on campus. When you look at employee COVID-19 data in Lamar CISD, 631 employees have been diagnosed with COVID-19 over this past year. 239 employees have experienced COVID symptoms, but they have tested negative, and 19 employees currently are diagnosed and they are off work. Additional employee quarantine information: 309 employees were quarantined after exposure to another employee. 317 employees were quarantined due to exposure outside of the district. 50 employees were quarantined due to exposure from students. 74 employees were quarantined as they cared for an ill family member. 5 employees were quarantined after traveling to a level 3 country. 12 employees were quarantined after traveling internationally this year, and 3 employees were quarantined currently. When you look at our employee leave information over the previous year, over 1,000 employees, 1,152 have actually taken advantage of EPSO, our emergency paid sick leave, and 5 have taken advantage of expanded FMLA opportunities. So when you look at exposure, Lamar CISD has not closed one campus during the 2021 school year, and really we've been prompt and responsive with contact tracing and quarantining individuals. So when a student or a staff member has a positive case, we immediately go into the quarantine mode. We find out who they were exposed to or individuals who came in contact with and make sure we quarantine them as well. And we really feel like that's why we've kept our campuses open for this school year. And we do believe that face masks have proven to be an effective mitigating factor as they reduce the number of individuals who would be at risk of COVID-19. We have some updates that will be starting coming up after the board meeting. When you look at athletic area updates, specifically in the Region 4 area, we looked at Katy, Humble, Clear Creek ISD, Alvin, Galena Park, Spring, Aldine, Alief, Beaumont, and Cy-Fair to understand their mask rules. You see there that the majority of them are having their mask rules stay into effect. Humble is keeping masks inside but not at outside events. And then it's about 50-50 when it comes to capacity changes. You see a lot of them hovering around 50%. Katy is looking to increase to 75%. And the conversations are really just starting about summer camps. You might recall last year, a lot of camps were canceled all around the state when it comes to athletics. So several have said yes, they're going to have summer camps. There will be some capacity limits and they will be charging fees. If you look at the bottom there, the proposal for Lamar CISD is to keep those mask rules in effect, to increase our stadium capacity to 75%, to increase our baseball and softball to 50%, and then you see again the participation for wrestling. We are planning to have summer camps, 75% capacity, and we are planning to charge fees this summer for those camps. When you look here at the different sports, wrestling, softball, baseball, soccer, track, and you see the current capacities, across the board we're looking to either double or increase the tickets for parents that are in place. So for example here, if you were to look at softball, we currently have 2 tickets for sub-varsity and 4 tickets for varsity. We're looking to increase that coming up next week to 4 tickets for sub-varsity and 6 tickets for varsity. If things go well over that 2-week period, they would then open ticket sales at the gate to full capacity. So we are looking at some opportunities to just ease in and open things up for our parents throughout Lamar CISD. And you have this handout at your desk as well. Looking at PE and recess, social distancing standards have been updated to 3 feet from the additional 6 feet, the original 6 feet rather, with proper masking. Outdoor PE activities will not require a mask to be worn as they are structured and they can be monitored by that PE instructor. Indoor PE activities will require a mask during entry and exit, but masks can be removed during some specific activities, again being monitored by an employee. And students participating in free play during recess will continue to wear a mask until we reach level yellow. Then masks will only be worn when social distancing can't be maintained. When you look at performing and visual arts, the mask rules remain in effect for the remainder of the 2021 school year. The exceptions there from performing and visual arts, any student who is performing on a wind instrument when rehearsing or performing in activities such as dance, color guard, or in theater. We're also implementing a phase-in plan to increase our auditorium capacity this semester for performing and visual arts. Our current auditorium capacity is at 20%. We're looking again next week to double that to 40%, and if things go well, increase that again to 60% by mid-April for the remainder of the school year. When it comes to vaccination, effective this week, individuals who have been in close contact with someone who has COVID-19 will not be required to quarantine if they have been fully vaccinated within the last 3 months and don't have any symptoms. So fully vaccinated would be your first shot, your second shot, 3 weeks have passed. So if you're at that point and you would be at risk of exposure or near someone with a positive case, you would not have to quarantine at that point. And again, vaccine distribution, we have worked immediately to get our nurses, our athletic trainers, and our police officers vaccinated with our healthcare providers and partners in Fort Bend County immediately. And I will give big kudos to HR and to athletics. They have been working around the clock with all of the area providers. You see there the county, Memorial Hermann, Methodist, and the Texas Vaccine Institute to provide any opportunity for our staff members to get vaccinated. Certainly as a school district, we don't manage or have control over the supply, but every single time that we've had the opportunity to partner with someone who has the vaccine, we've taken advantage of it. We've had 3 on-site vaccine distributions already, and we're planning another one right now. So again, kudos to those individuals who are giving up their time to make those vaccine distributions possible. And I'll pause there, and myself and staff are standing by to answer any questions.
Do you have any idea how many personnel have had the opportunity to get the vaccine, or?
Prior to spring break, it was 600.
Definitively, we did a survey and said how many of you have already been vaccinated, and about 650 said that they had been vaccinated. Another 2,300 indicated an interest, and we shared their contact information with the county as well as with Methodist and Memorial Hermann. We will be doing another survey tomorrow. We're required to report to TEA every week what percentage of our staff is being vaccinated. So we should have a better answer for you Thursday night. So that's
Very
where
good.
we are.
Good, thank you.
I have a couple of.
So wait, can I just get the numbers
Yes.
on that? Okay, so you said 2,300 have expressed interest
In
on
receiving
top
a
of the
vaccine.
600 and what?
About 650 and about 2,340.
Okay, so
And that's thus far, Ms. Williams.
almost 3,000. We can roughly say 3,000.
About 3,000, right.
Okay.
And that's thus far. People, kind of, we saw our numbers from our earlier inquiry about who would be interested. We've seen our numbers increase, and I expect that to continue as people are beginning to see others get vaccinated and see positive reactions. So
What is our total, so that's just teachers or that's staff?
that's staff. We
Staff.
put it out there to
So
everybody,
what is our total number, or approximately staff that we have currently?
including subs and part-time. We hover around 5,000.
Oh, still 5,000, okay. Thank you.
So close to almost half possibly could be vaccinated by now. Okay. Or trying to get the vaccine.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Welch.
So I want to remind the public that the workshops are only for questions. They're not for deliberation. And I've tried to get that changed, but it didn't pass out of committee. So there's not going to be a whole lot of deliberation tonight, just going to be questions. So I'm going to try to ask a couple of questions before we'd have deliberation on Thursday night. The masks are the big, elephant in the room that they get all the attention. Help me understand why the administration wants to continue that in the classroom.
So I think that we've been really successful this school year with our COVID-19 protocols. I think when you look at our neighboring districts and many districts in Region 4, we have not had to close one campus. And I absolutely think that our protocols, as mentioned by the board, being effective throughout the school year. And the big thing with masks is again, that at risk of exposure. And so what often happens, let's say, at a secondary campus, I'm a junior at a high school, I have a diagnosis, everyone in the class is masked, then I have to quarantine, no one else does, because there's two mitigating factors. Whenever you remove the mask, immediately that at risk of exposure spreads, and our contact tracers have to tick. Then immediately you could quarantine that entire class. That individual isn't in a self-contained classroom. They could have 7 classes, and you go to each of those classes, they're walking down the hallway. Immediately removing the mask with COVID-19 protocols would likely require a campus to be flipped if there are multiple cases on that campus. And so the mask is a mitigating factor. It keeps someone with a positive diagnosis from spreading it to other individuals. You'll notice that our lower grades, pre-K through 3, the students don't have to require masks, and our elementary campuses, being primarily self-contained, are very vigilant. They have seating charts, they have staggered hallways, directional hallways, and they bring the students to different areas. They're masked in the hallway. And so if a student in one of those classes is diagnosed with COVID-19, you're flipping that class for the 10-day period and then bringing students back. If everyone on the campus weren't wearing a mask, that would increase the likelihood of contact tracing. And so when we pulled our cameras and we'd see an individual walking down the hall, you'd likely have to clarify, based on our COVID-19 protocols, additional individuals would be at risk of exposure based on our board-approved Lamar CISD guidelines.
But not if we change the protocols.
Correct.
So, I have a mask on, you have a mask on. If I take mine off and you put on a second mask, would that not do the same thing? I know you're not a medical doctor, but.
Right, I wouldn't be the one to answer that. I know, again, working with HR, our contact tracers, our lead nurse, they work with the county health officials, again, reviewing our protocols. When you have 2 barriers, that really helps. I have a mask, you have a mask, you're keeping it with you, I have it with me. I wouldn't be aware if one individual wearing 2 masks would do anything.
Well, as everybody knows who's followed this, like I have over the last 12 months, there's no definitive studies out there on the effectiveness of masks with COVID. So if we can ask one doctor, it's like asking 2 mechanics what's wrong with your car. You might get 2 different diagnoses. You might get 2 different medical opinions from people who have this exact same degrees. So, and one of the reasons I don't like, well, I'm going to save that for Thursday night. Everybody notices that nobody here is wearing a mask tonight. So we're in perfect compliance. We have been with the governor's executive order over the last 8 to 9 months, whatever it was, and we still are tonight. So help me understand, if we were to keep the mask on the bus, walking through the halls, but when a student gets in his or her desk, they take it off, what would be the harm there? If we also change the protocols with, oh my gosh, someone's got COVID, we got to quarantine the entire school, because I think that's been a little extreme. I thought it was okay back in the summer, but I think that some time's gone on. I'm having a hard time understanding it still.
While we set our own protocols, the CDC is who has defined close contact. And so the way our children are currently set up in classrooms, if you have kids sitting in class unmasked, they're going to inherently be exposed. You're going to quarantine, because we don't have the physical space to put every child 6 feet apart, because you're talking 6 feet on this side, 6 feet on this side, 6 feet on this side, and 6 feet on this side. And those upper grades, that's going to be very problematic. And
Yeah, but
again,
that's all of the assumption, though, that the masks are doing something, and that a second mask wouldn't help. So in other words, if you make it optional, and student A doesn't have a mask on, and student B does, and goes to the extent, puts a second mask on, I don't understand.
Well, I think that our fallback position is, our data shows that it has worked for us by following. We have not flipped any schools. We have only flipped classes, and it's because our contact tracers use the mask to determine who is placed in quarantine.
Right.
You take that away, then that doesn't exist anymore. And as was mentioned earlier by Dr. Rockwood, I'm a kid that comes in, I'm positive, I'm in a class with 25, I expose all those 25, I walk down the hallway, everybody I come in contact with down the hallway gets exposed.
But not if they're wearing masks.
I'm
Not
not
if
quite
everybody
sure.
else is wearing masks. That's what I'm getting at. That's a deliberation, so.
Yeah, because I'm not quite sure I quite
Mr. Welch,
understand.
as I understand it, and feel free to redirect me, but you're saying if the student who is positive is not wearing a mask, but others are, is that a mitigating factor? And the answer is no, because this child that's positive is actually, every time they exhale, and if Marsha Beck is in here, she's probably going to do a better job of that than I am. But if they are not masked and positive, they are spreading the disease, and that is our concern.
A disease with a 99.997 recovery rate. I know the symptoms getting to that recovery rate are not always good, but usually most people don't even know they have it. So I'm saying that, I'm going to save that for Thursday. Help me understand some of the athletic policy ideas. One,
Coach Nelson's gonna-
I've heard about, and I don't know if this is true or not, I've been told this by one parent, that some of the aquatic participant rules are not the same as some of the other athletic participant rules. Is that accurate?
No, sir. This year during swimming, during our first swim meet of the season, we did not have spectators. That's the same thing that we did in each of our sports. During basketball, we did not have spectators at our scrimmages. During baseball, we did not have spectators at our scrimmages. During football, we did not have spectators at our scrimmages. That was true in every sport, junior high and high school.
So at our pools, are we having spectators at the pools?
Swimming season has concluded. We
Right.
did all of our swim meets at the LCISD natatorium because our campus natatoriums, our practice pools, did not have enough seating to socially distance spectators
At all?
at all. No, sir, they
But
practice.
but our gyms had enough room to separate people socially distant to watch basketball and volleyball.
Yes, it was a
How
space
is
issue.
that- How is that possible?
It was a number of seats issue. It
So
was
the-
just a purely bleacher issue.
So the aquatic center over here, I've been in it, you can fit some participants there, 6 feet spread out.
Yes, and that's where we hosted all of our swim meets this year. So if Terry swam against Foster, they swam there instead of
But
swimming
with no
at the Foster.
participants watching.
After the first swim meet, we had spectators.
How about water polo
Water polo is not a UIL sport. It's a club sport at one of our campuses.
at one of the campuses?
And they are practicing at that campus. They are not hosting contests at that campus. They've been offered the opportunity to host contests at the LCISD natatorium.
I was told that other districts are hosting water polo events in their facilities and we are not.
I can't speak to that. I can tell you we've held all of our sports to the same standard, but again, water polo is not a UIL sport at this time.
So it's not a UIL sport, but it's still offered in the school? Is
No,
that
sir.
right? It's not, it's a club.
Correct.
Well, I have a lot more thoughts and I'm gonna shut up for a second. Let somebody else talk.
I have one question before I go.
Yes.
When you were talking about the masks and y'all were still talking about the six foot distancing, that policy has changed with CDC. Are we going to continue the 6 foot or are we going to the 3?
The CDC recommendation at 3 feet is with universal masking.
Are we going to go to that? Are we gonna just play out the year with the 6 foot?
Right, so, you saw in the PE updates, one of the things we're working on for cafeteria space is going to that 3 feet instead of 6 feet. In our classrooms in Lamar CISD, we've always spaced students as much as instructionally possible. And, we put our COVID-19 protocols in place, but there are current situations where our students are probably already at about 3 or 4 feet with masks on as it is, but we're not gonna space students mass 6 feet when they could be 3.
Are we going to increase any sizes of our classrooms as far as students? In other words, if this class has 16 and the other class has 20, are we going to
Not to my knowledge.
consider that 3 foot? Or are we going to
So
stay
the
as
only
we are?
changing we're doing to class sizes are really related to whether or not students are switching from virtual back to
Okay.
on campus or face-to-face or vice versa. That really impacts what we do with our class
Okay, so
sizes.
it's just if virtual start coming back in
Right, or
until the end
or
of the
if
school
they switch
year?
the other way,
Okay.
it could reduce class sizes.
I'm just going to make one quick comment about the masks before I go.
Let's not deliberate, though.
No, okay. In my experience, as far as the mask, I agree with you on the masking. It works for a lot of other reasons other than COVID. I've experienced that with my children, my little ones. And my question is, at some of the elementary schools, there's one in particular, I get a lot of reports that their classrooms are closed, and it's the 4th and 5th graders, and they're not having to use their masks in their classrooms. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of a classroom or a campus where any grade level 4 through 12 is not wearing masks. And if there is an instance, I would just recommend you bring it to the district's attention and we can look into it.
Okay, 4th and 5th grade are required to wear the masks
yes,
in
ma'am.
the classroom.
Right, so 4th grade through 12th grade, you would wear a mask at all times. And the lower grades, pre-K, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, they only wear them upon entry, exit, hallways, common areas. But there are opportunities when they're getting direct instruction in their seat, they would get to take the mask off.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, if that's okay. The ramifications are, if we were to change any policy or standards at this point, the elementary has already chosen their 9 weeks. Does that start new on Monday?
I believe so.
That's correct.
And the six weeks for the secondary starts the middle of April.
Correct.
So the secondary would have a chance to make their choices upon whatever, if we decide to make any changes. But the elementary have already made their decisions on the protocols at place right now, correct?
Yes, that is correct. With our current way that we do that is at each grading period as required by the state of Texas.
Okay, so if, let's say something did get changed and a parent wasn't comfortable with that change, are they stuck for the 9 weeks, or could they come back and say, we didn't know you were gonna change something what can we do now? Because we're not comfortable with what you're doing.
We have currently worked with all of our campuses and our schools and our parents to try to make adjustments as necessary for like intervention purposes.
Okay.
But I will state that when we start looking at this time of year, moving a number of kids in and out of a classroom at elementaries and secondary is going to have a great impact on the system
Correct.
at this time period in the year.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Mr. Hunt?
I just had a follow-up question to one of the things that Mr. Welch asked, was that we're not wearing masks in this room, but we're also up at least 6 feet apart. Is this type of distance typical in an elementary, middle school, junior high, or high school classroom?
I would say it's variable, campus to campus, class to class, course to course. Again, we always, throughout the year, have tried to socially distance our students as much as instructionally possible. If it's a smaller classroom in their space, we're certainly going to spread them out as much as we can. If it's a larger classroom, and then we get into the mitigating factors. And so at secondary, the masks really help. We've added the barriers or the dividers at our lower grades, so even if you are a little bit closer, that you've got those plexiglass partitions there. So, you know, I think when you look at the many different campuses we have, many different grade levels, there's not a set standard, but we're always looking campus by campus, class by class, to distance our students as much as we can.
It would be hard to say that it's spaced out like this in a classroom.
One of the things that's also different about this environment than a classroom is that I know that some of us on the board have also been vaccinated, and based on your prior comments, that there's how many teachers that have expressed interest in getting a vaccine and haven't gotten one yet?
Right, I believe we said 2,400
Have expressed it.
have expressed interest, and we know about 600, 650 who have at least received the first shot.
Okay.
That's all staff, not just teachers.
And so as one of the people that was a religious mask wearer until I got my vaccine, I know that not all of the teachers have had the luxury of being able to get a vaccine yet, right?
Correct.
I'm trying to think through the logistics if we remove the mask rules. And Dr. Bowen was talking a little bit about what quarantining and contact tracing would look like. How would contact tracing even really logistically be possible if we don't wear masks?
If we all wear or don't wear?
If the board says no one has to wear masks, it's completely optional.
So that does put a lot of burden on the campus staff, meaning the teachers who interact with the kids, assuming it's a child that's positive, and campus administration. Teachers have been very good about providing the seating charts when we have conversations with them about, you know, tell me your procedures in class. At the secondary level, really above 4th grade, because mask wearing is consistent, there's very few times we have to investigate, if you will, because it's pretty clear cut. The teachers are, yep, they wear a mask in my classroom, we're good. So it really becomes a lot more complex and burdensome on the staff, because we're going to have to sit down with each teacher and say who was in your class, who was in the class, who was masked, who was not masked, where were they in the room, were they doing group work together? It certainly becomes more complex at in hall passings, as Dr. Rockwood mentioned, because now you have a child walking down the hall that's possibly and interacting with groups of kids. So then we'd have to pull and review video in addition to conversations. But it does become more complex, and it would involve really a lot of feedback from the staff on the campus.
So would teachers have to, would there have to be a policy that teachers would need to keep notes of who's wearing a mask and who's not? I mean, I don't know how a teacher could possibly keep that type of information in their head of like, so-and-so is positive and they realized it on Tuesday and I have to go back to my lesson plan and we did group work and Jimmy's in a group with Susie and Billy. You know.
We would expect them to keep some type of, I don't want to say notes or records, but they do typically use seating charts and they know what their lesson plans were. We've also asked them to maintain some consistency in where kids are sitting and what they're doing in the classroom, so that those things are they're knowledgeable. But Mr. Hunt?
It would require additional work on the part of the teacher.
Because the issue is from the time a child or any positive individual, you have a look back period. So I become symptomatic on Friday. We have to look at the 2 days prior. but sometimes they become symptomatic on a Friday, and the parents may not actually test them until the following Tuesday. So now we're asking a teacher to remember back 7 or 8 days what happened with a child in a classroom, and in a secondary classroom, Dr. Moss, 120 kids, throughout the day? 150 kids, and so we're, as Dr. Randall said, we're putting a great burden on the classroom teacher to go back and tell you who was exposed to whom in the class.
That burden would be lifted if we changed the contact tracing policy, in addition to the mask policy.
That's correct. I mean, I think logistically, not to speak for the contact tracing individuals, but if you were going to remove masks and that was an option, you would likely need to remove the protocols as well. I think it would be very difficult to ask campus staff and district staff to try to go back and contact trace individuals. I just think it would be difficult.
And I do also think we would need to check with the county on that, because those are CDC guidelines. Those are not Lamar CISD guidelines. The definitions of close contact and who needs to be quarantined are CDC guidelines.
What is the administration's thought on some of the other ISDs in the state that have made masks optional? Because there have been some, I think Magnolia is the closest to us. But what is there any official position from the administration on this?
Oh, yes.
Please.
I have no problems with saying that, because we've got 40 days or so left till the end of this school year. And when you're gonna take, and right in the midst of this, you're gonna take and change protocol that many kids and staff have gotten used to. We have not had the challenges with staff that other school districts have had because of our protocols. You change the protocols, that's gonna be impacted. I can't speak for Magnolia, because that's a different school district and a different, I don't know what's driving their decision. You saw the number of districts that are right around us that have indicated that they're gonna stay with the mask protocol. I personally, the position that I would take from a standpoint of administration is that we stay with our protocols because it has worked. We got through our football season, in the playoffs, volleyball season, all the way to the state championship, basketball season, playoffs. All of those kids got a chance to participate because we had these protocols in place. We started school on August the 24th, and where a lot of districts did not. And it's because of the staff's hard work and the protocols and the support of this board that ultimately got us to that point. That's data that's right here. That's not data of Magnolia or some district that has 500 kids in it. That is Lamar CISD data. It has worked for the district. When you take and make that adjustment, then we need to be prepared for all of those parents who have worked with their daycares and everybody else based on our protocols, and we change it. Then you asked a question earlier, somebody did, what do we do? I don't think you tell those parents you can't change now. You signed up this way, so you're gonna have to stay with it. I think that you may have some that may want to make adjustments based on that. So I would say that next year should be a very different year, because I think we get through this year, and a lot of the things that we're gonna have, with half of our staff vaccinated, I hope that by the end of this year, that number is more like 80% of our staff that's vaccinated. That puts us in a much better position with staff coming and feeling more comfortable with interacting with our kids when they're there. That is just, again, that is, you asked administration's opinion, and there it is.
Yeah.
Everybody's got, leadership is about doing what is best for the organization. And that's what I'm gonna try to do, is look at the entire organization, look at the success that we've had, and then ultimately try to make sure that we continue that success by relieving some of the things that we can take and make adjustments to.
Let me stop real fast. Ms. Kaminsky has left the meeting, just for the record. I had to say that.
What is the administration thinking about the outdoor graduation ceremonies coming up in May?
I think they're all getting 10 tickets.
are we, no, as far as the masks go and the socially distance and all those kind of things? We had outdoor ceremonies last school year in Katy, and masks, can't remember, I know I didn't have to wear one because I was 6 feet apart on their stage, and so I'm just curious what you folks are thinking about that.
Right now, our students are going to be encouraged to have their masks, but the seats are going to be separated 6 feet apart for the graduates. The patrons that are coming into the stadium are also going to be encouraged to have their mask.
One of the things
So
that,
it'll be optional?
one of the things that we have working for us right now is that, how many weeks are we talking about now? From 5 or 6 weeks before graduation starts. Hopefully, we don't have an uptick in positive cases like we typically do after spring break. That it continues to go down and the level changes, and then we can make some adjustments. But right now, we're planning the ceremonies basically the way that we had them this past year. But that is one of those areas that certainly could be an adjustment made depending on where we are.
And I believe a lot, people came in with masks once they got to their area, if they were sitting. I think
With their
some of them
family
took their
group.
masks off once they sat down.
Correct. And again, is that with our current protocols in place right now, that I think Dr. Randall said it correct, said this, that we are constantly looking at our protocols. Currently, as we are planning graduation, you asked what's the plan. It would be everybody to have a mask on, and then everybody, 6 feet apart or 6 feet apart out in the stands, and that's currently what it is. However, we get closer to May, these are some of the things that we'll continue to evaluate, and we can make adjustments as we have with the athletic events and performing arts and recess and some of the other areas, depending upon where we are. We still have time.
I have a question about that if you're,
Please.
so that was one of my things was the outdoor events, and so, if we vote to make any adjustments or keep these protocols in line, as y'all have suggested, then that, I guess I would like to ask some questions about outdoor events and why we would not make them optional masks at this point. Why that wouldn't be part of the new protocols,
I think
especially if there's social distancing.
Are you speaking about outdoor athletic events?
In general, yes, like track, all the outdoor, I know the weather's heating up.
Mhm.
And so there was a couple of things, it's not on this, but when I was looking up Ms. Volsick kindly shared some of the protocols with me, that when they're active, physically active, so I wanted to be really, really clear with students, parents, everybody,
Sure.
coaches, of what we're expecting, because I hear different stories all the time, and I want to make sure that we're consistent with what we're trying to enforce, and it's going, along with policy.
So I'm going to break it down into 3 categories. When we're talking about spectators at an outdoor event.
Okay.
Spectators at an outdoor event, we're going to ask them to wear a face covering when they enter and when they exit. Anytime they use a common space such as a restroom, concession stand, ticket booth, anytime they're in a shared space with students. But when they're sitting with their family or standing along a fence line, we've allowed parents to bring lawn chairs in if they choose to sit along the outfield fence lines at baseball and softball to utilize that space at our fields that have it. We are not asking them to wear their mask during that time. If they come in, sit in the bleachers, or sitting as a family group, they can take their mask off.
Okay.
We're just asking that at any point they may be exposed to students or other non-household members that they have their masks on.
Okay.
Um,
And
so
that has been our policy the whole year, or that's updated?
that's updated.
Okay, so that is updated.
That would be an update.
Okay.
Athletes in our spring sports. So when we talk about outdoor sports such as track, baseball, softball, tennis, golf, those same policies tend to hold true. If they're on a bus, if they're entering a locker room, if they're in a shared space like a dugout, sitting on a bench, we ask them to have their mask on. But if they're playing soccer, if they're playing baseball or softball in a space where they can be 6 feet or more spread out, they don't have to have their mask on. So we've said for a baseball player, when they go to the outfield, they pull that gaiter or that mask down. When they even go up to bat, because we saw the safety risk of having a mask that could impede your line of vision when you're in the batter's box, take the mask off. We weighed those two options at that point. But when they enter a dugout and they're going to be sitting next to a teammate within 6 feet, we've asked that they pull that mask back up. And our concern with these spring sports is, remember, these are the athletes that didn't have a season last year. These are the athletes who lost their season when COVID hit last year. So we're trying to balance that desire to return to normalcy with our desire not to take one game from one athlete that didn't get a season in 2020. And so we don't want them to get sick. We don't want to have to quarantine them. So when they're on the bus, when they're in the locker room, when they're in the weight room, when they're in the dugout, when they're on the bench, they have to have a mask on. But when they're out in the field of play, on the tennis court, on the golf course, etc., they don't have to have their mask on.
So before you go on to number
Yes, ma'am.
3, so what is what is our current or possibly updated protocols on the quarantine for a team? Because I know a few instances this year we had to do like a whole team, and obviously that's hard for the team. What is our current? Have we updated our policy on that?
We have not updated our policy when it comes to quarantining. We are following the same quarantine protocols that Dr. Bowen has described tonight. So when a principal is notified that a student who is an athlete has tested positive, my office gets notified. We do the contact tracing on that. So we will contact the coach to ask, Dr. Randall is an athlete on your team. Tell me, was he at practice during the 2 days prior to his positive test? Where did you practice? What did you do? What class period is he in? What group does he work out with? We'll go back and check the video to find out how many kids in the group, were they wearing masks during the workout? Were they wearing masks when they entered and exited the weight room? If they took a bus trip during that time, did the athletes on the team have their masks on during that bus ride? Anytime they were within that 6-foot bubble where they could have been sharing those particulates, how many of the team members were masked? There have been times we haven't had to quarantine anyone on the team. It's just been the positive athlete. There have been times, hey, we've had to quarantine one other teammate because they walked in together and they were sharing a bottle of Gatorade. There have been times we've had to say, hey, the 6 kids that were sitting around him on the bus have had to be quarantined because they didn't have their masks on and they were within 6 feet. There have been times we've had to say, we're gonna have to quarantine a large portion of the team. Sometimes when we have seen spread within a team, the idea with quarantining within the team is to stop the spread. If we could take out one athlete for those 10 days and the rest of the team could continue, the season continued. But sometimes when we have 1 athlete, 2 athletes, 3 athletes, and we get to a point where we're afraid we've had multiple cases on this team and it's possibly spreading. Or in a basketball program, it's spread from the freshman team to the JV team to the varsity team. We're gonna shut this program down for 10 days, let it run its course, make sure that we've got it contained so it doesn't spread from the boys team to the girls team, or from the basketball team to the entire student body. And so that's been our quarantine process at this point. And that's part of the reason that mask wearing in those close spaces is important.
Thank you for sharing that. So, like I said, things are heating up. The weather is starting to, warm up. So if they, per our policy right now, our protocols, are they allowed to pull it down if they're having a hard time breathing?
Yes, we've talked about
Even
that
if they're in that
specifically
space.
with our soccer coaches. If I just get subbed out of a soccer game, I don't have to report directly to the bench. They've got the whole track. So that player can go down the track as long as they're 6 feet away from a teammate. They don't have to have that mask up. If I've just come off the baseball field, before I go into the dugout, they've got the bullpen. We've got spaces at each of those locations where they don't have to be in that confined space.
So the coaches are being very clear with the athletes that if you need a mask break or whatever and you're not active in the game or practice, this is where you need to go if you don't want to have your mask on. I just want to make sure that we're being crystal clear with the athletes and they're not feeling forced to do anything. And then I hear, almost passed out. I couldn't breathe because it's so sweaty on my mouth and my face, and I mean, there's, you know, all kinds of things.
I hope so,
I'm
but I
not
can
there.
certainly clarify.
I'm not there, and I don't know, I know there's always two sides to every story, and so I just wanna make sure as a district that these stories aren't common, and that they're really encouraging them to be safe with their own health versus everybody's gotta do this, just go get in there and put your mask on. So, the coaches are being really clear with that, or?
I can tell you the coaches have been told, I will clarify.
Okay.
To
so that
ensure we are
that
communicating
that
correctly.
They share, I think it would be really good that they
Sure.
share, and sometimes the kids may not. You know, I mean, I don't know what the scenarios are, but say if you need to, you know, take a break during these times, this is where you go. You don't have to sit in here. And so I think especially with the outdoor and the heat
Sure.
coming, I think that's gonna be really important.
Well, I can say that last night I attended the Briscoe Junior High parents track Zoom. I had to make sure I had to get all that right.
Congratulations.
And they were, yeah, thank you. Coach Tosh and the rest of the coaches were very clear on the expectations and the rules.
Okay.
You know, made my daughter watch part of it, and she's like, I already know all this. They've already covered it all with us. But they were covering the parents, and you know, they have it very organized and very strategic, and you know, where you go, what you do, when you wear your mask, when you don't wear your mask, so on and so forth. So at least at that school, it's being communicated very clear, not just to the students, but to the parents as well.
And that's good. I don't know how consistent it is across the board, you know, and everybody has their own ideas, or, you know, if somebody missed a practice and they didn't hear it, whatever the case may be, that
Sure.
we just reiterate that safety aspect of it, that if they're having a hard time in any way breathing, and they're not active, that we're sharing that information and encouraging them to go catch a breath,
Sure.
right, if they need one, so, okay.
And then
number-
the
part
third,
three.
the third group is our athletes who are in off-season currently. Those who are working out during their athletic periods, but are not actively participating in contests right now. And those same general guidelines are going to hold true. If they're an indoor sport and they're participating in the gym, if they are actively engaged in exercise, let's say they're doing a basketball drill, they would not have to have their mask pulled up, but if they're on the sidelines, they would have to have their mask pulled up.
So we shouldn't see anybody running or actively running, or like soccer, track, any of these things with a mask on,
That is a personal choice.
unless they want it.
That's correct.
Okay, so nobody has to feel like they have to wear it, and the athletes are they're informed that if you're running, if you're doing these things, you do not have to have your mask. If they're not yelling at them to put their masks on.
You do not have to wear your mask if you are actively exercising, and that's been consistent since June.
Okay, because I hear other things, and so that the coach yelled at me to pull it up when I was running, and so I just want to make sure that we're just being crystal clear with it.
The one exception to that may be a bit confusing is when they're in the weight room, because it is a small
This was not in the weight room.
confined space,
So
but
if
that
we
would
can
be the
just,
only thing.
especially after whatever happens on Thursday, just reiterate that.
Absolutely.
I would really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Any other mask questions?
Yes, but that was just the outdoor,
Okay.
we were just on the outdoor piece. And so graduation, we said, and so that would be the same thing, when the parents sit down, they can remove the mask. So it's mask optional when you're not moving around other folks type of thing. And then that also the graduates, they'll be 6 feet apart, so they're mask optional as well, once they're seated.
Once they're seated, yes.
Right, and how about when they're walking up by themselves?
Well, when they are coming in, working to come and get the diplomas, we're planning to separate them 6 feet apart as well.
So they can have it down for their pictures, and they can have it down while they're, all that type of thing.
They did that last year.
For right now, that is the
A lot
goal.
of them had it on.
But a lot of them
anyways,
took it off.
When they took the pictures,
I just wanted to know what we're expecting,
Yeah,
and,
but
you
they
know,
took it off.
they're always welcome to wear it if they want, right?
yes,
It's,
so every time that they are 6 feet apart, and that is the goal, that we're trying to arrange them 6 feet apart, they don't have to wear the mask. But in instances where they are not 6 feet apart, so say for example, when they're coming in and they're crowded in an area, then they
Right,
would have to
right.
wear the mask, yes. Also with families, when they come in, they have to wear the mask, but once they are seated with other family members, they don't.
like a
have to.
restaurant,
Correct.
right? Yes, the in and out, the exit, okay. And then I had a question, did anybody have one on the outdoor? Okay. So on the recess, I guess that would, I don't know if recess is always outdoor. I don't know what. they
No,
do
mom,
these days.
no, ma'am, not necessarily. Often outdoor, but dependent on weather.
Okay, so recess, I see that we've updated, because that is one thing that I've seen a lot of, I've been communicated quite often about. And so I think that is, so just to reiterate that we're saying that during, well, it just says PE on here, but the title is PE and recess. So we're assuming when it says PE that we're assuming recess at the same time.
We have an updated color guide chart that follows our COVID color levels of red, orange, and yellow. While we're on orange, mask will still be required during free play. If we're lucky enough,
What is free play? Is that recess?
basically, yes, recess with no structured activities.
Did you read?
By all means, I'm gonna turn it over to Diane.
Okay,
So
thank you.
elementary students, right, I mean, they get to go outside and play, and they're elementary kids, so they all play together. That's what free play is. So even though we're in zones, so let's say a zone is the big toy, and we call that's usually the bigger playground structure. That would be a time where the teacher is monitoring, and kids get to freely run up, go up the slide, go down the slide, climb around. They're not going to be socially distanced because they're free playing. So that would be a time where, again, we would encourage them to have their masks on so that when the teacher has, if there was a positive case, we would not have to quarantine the whole class. If
So when you
it
say
was,
encouraged, what does that mean, optional?
so in our current protocols for pre-K through 3, we talk about common areas such as the gym, the cafeteria, etc. And so we did encourage them, yes, to have their masks on. And if, for example, a
So the-
parent,
I want to clarify, does encouraged mean optional?
if a parent had a concern, the teacher and principal worked with the parent, for example, then their child might have an opportunity to jump rope or be more socially distanced so that, again, we were not quarantining everybody.
Okay, I guess I'm missing something. Does the encourage mean optional?
No, ma'am. We
Okay, so
have,
it's-
we have requested that with the et cetera in our policy on common spaces, that due to some of the quarantines that we were having to do during recess, that we have required campuses with the policy we have on et cetera to ask our kids in that younger grade level to wear masks during recess.
So 12 through, kinder through 3, they have to wear masks in recess, outdoors.
Correct. And what we have done, again, is that as we look at going at the first of the year, one of the reasons that we began to evaluate the current cases we were seeing is how we were having to flip classes because kids were not masked up and they were running around each other. And so therefore we were having to flip some classes. And as we were evaluating our protocols and we saw common spaces, cafeteria, and et cetera, based upon the information that we were having where kids were getting, quarantined, we went ahead and requested that campuses, yes, in the policy we currently have, that recess would be included to that.
So in our current policy, it says 12 K through 3, third grade, they're required to wear a mask during free play.
When you look at the policy that we currently have in pre-K through 3 in common spaces in the cafeteria and then the transitions, and it says et cetera, based upon the increase in cases, we went ahead, yes, and mandated that in that current policy of et cetera, recess would be included in that current policy.
Okay, and so parents were communicated, or we
By their
communicated-
principal, yes.
Okay, so it's not a campus decision, it's a district decision.
Correct.
Okay, so.
Can I do a clarifying real quick on what you're doing, if you
Sure,
don't
sure.
mind? So if they're playing on like the big toy, and I know how they do, and they're sliding down the slide together, but if a group goes off to swing on the swings, they're not really right on top of each other, or they're playing out in the field. Are you just saying all the time at recess, or certain basic areas if they're gonna be in a certain because a big toy is a confined area.
What I'm going to do also is ask Dr. Bowen to come up here, actually, because she has been involved in the current content tracing in regard to recess, and I think that's a piece that she's going to be able to articulate.
So what we've said, and free play is really what we're talking about, if they are not in a structured activity where their work is being directed by a teacher, we've said mask up, because that's where the contact tracing problems were occurring. They were out in recess. You know, young children don't maintain social distancing regularly on their own. And so we were having to flip classes regularly with those younger grades. And so that's when the change was made, that if they are in free play, not in a structured activity, while at recess, they must be masked up.
Okay.
And so this age group is not masked the rest of the day, just at free play.
Correct. And what we do in the classrooms and at lunch, et cetera, is they are structured in how they sit. So we really have a limited group that we're quarantining.
I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear with.
Right.
Were you gonna say something?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
They got there, so.
Okay, and so then indoor PE activities will require masks during entry and exit, but they can be removed during active exercises. So that is for all PE, all grades?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's that's elementary and secondary?
Pre-K through 12. As they enter the gym, they'll need to be in their mask. As they get into their roll call lines, when the teacher puts them into an activity and they're actively exercising, they can remove their mask.
Okay, and that's an update?
That is an update and a clarification from our previous policy. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I had a question, and I don't think it's in this packet. Let's see. As far as teachers go and staff, so most of this is, for the students. Unless, did somebody else have one on these topics? No. Okay. Are teachers required to wear, according to this, what I've read, they're required to wear a mask all day?
Correct.
Okay.
There are times when during their conference period, they're in their classroom alone, or if they're eating lunch in their classroom alone, obviously no. But if they are in the presence of students and within 6 feet of staff, yes, that is the expectation.
So, when I guess, for example, if, a couple of things about that, are the teachers, and I don't know if this is a campus level decision or if it's consistent throughout the district, but if there's, when are teachers, I guess, so if their elementary teachers all have I just lost the word, what's the time period when they don't have?
A conference period or
Conference
planning period?
thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
So they all have an opportunity during the conference period, they do not have to have a mask on?
If they are not in the presence, if they are not within 6 feet, if they're meeting with a group to do something and they're within 6 feet of each other, we would expect them to be masked. But if they're sitting on their own, they're free to take it off.
And the teachers, if they want to have lunch together and they're 6 feet apart, are they being, how is that working? Because I think about their emotional.
So that's actually
frame of mind as
a very
well.
good question, and I'll be very candid. It was a little bit of a learning curve for us in the beginning. Lunch was a little bit of an issue, and teachers had to really learn to kind of self-regulate that if they wanted to sit down and have lunch together, that they had to be appropriately spaced. So I would say, anecdotally speaking, from our contact tracing, it has improved vastly throughout the year. Teachers really do have a good handle on that.
So they are not discouraged, or shouldn't be, per our policy or per our protocols, to not eat together as long as they can be at least 6 feet apart.
Correct, unless there were specific instances where their administrator may have sat down and said, this has been a repeated problem, I'm gonna say, change your approach. But correct, we are not saying you can't, we're saying if you eat lunch, you need to have appropriate social distancing.
And that's gonna change when you have two teachers, for instance, who got the vaccine in April and May.
We have not updated very candidly because we don't have a good handle on how many of all staff have had, or,
So those
two
kind
weeks
of
post.
updates are not in the update you guys are proposing?
Not yet, because we're not at the point where we have the vast number of people, but you're correct, in the future, and that's when Dr. Randall talked about if we can get through this school year, next year, we're going to have a vastly different situation because we will have a good handle. Hopefully, we have 80% of our staff vaccinated, and that does change all of those things, correct?
I think it's just very important for us, obviously, the mental health of our teachers. I know it's been quite a year, that they're not being discouraged as a group, I mean, because they're adults, right, to be able to eat together if they can maintain a 6 foot. And so I think that would be really important to reiterate to all campuses. I know a lot of times we have to have, you know, it changes per campus, but I think it's for their mental health as well, just to reiterate that to the principals, that is an important social aspect that the teachers probably depend on on a daily basis.
Oh, no,
you know.
I just.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
You're
you-
assuming teachers have time to eat lunch together.
Well, I know some do, so I'm not making this up.
Thank you.
This is from communications that I have received, and this is why I bring it up, because I don't want to hear that I know we try to build our teachers up, and so I want to, you know, when I hear things, I just want to make sure that when we're discussing this, that I bring that type of thing to the table. And so if we can reiterate, let's make sure that, you know, and if they're breaking something, that should be on that person, not the entire group. So if we can just reiterate that. I would appreciate
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's all I have for now. Oh, sorry, no, that's not it. One more thing would be, what are we doing? I know in our protocols, we say if a student and or teacher or staff, I guess, has a medical issue wearing a mask. I've witnessed and I have received communications, as I think all of us have, about students that are having severe acne, for lack of better words, different physical ailments because of, and their asthma is kicking up, different things. I wanted to see how diligent we're being in making sure that we're accommodating. I know it says they have to have a note from a physician, right?
Correct.
And so I don't know
Correct.
what that looks like at this point. Some of the stuff we didn't foresee in the beginning, right? And so now you're seeing different things come about, I guess, from wearing the mask. So what are we, how are we accommodating students that physically need a break from wearing a mask, either whether
And I was going to say, I'm going to let Dr. Mossage, from the staff perspective, we do have a few staff members that have provided medical documentation, and we've met their accommodation.
Okay,
Now,
thank
from the
you.
student perspective, I'll let Dr. Mossage.
Okay.
I think what we have done, and we've done it well this year, is that if a parent or a student is communicating with the administration, our administrators are working with those particular kids.
Okay.
And so what I would ask is that communicate with us and communicate with the schools. If there are specific issues on that, our principals are more than willing to try to troubleshoot those issues, what we have done this particular school year.
So by troubleshooting, can you be more specific? Like,
Well-
so if somebody brought a note and said, the doctor said they need a break from wearing the mask, but they're in person, how are we handling that, or what's a case scenario?
Well, we have some cases where some kids, whether they have been autistic or in some ways have not been able to necessarily be masked up. There have been situations where there is medical, and so we have to support those particular kids in this particular situation. And so what they would do is they would just work with those kids, make sure the teachers understand it and all of those things. Again, it would have to be a medical kind of note, but our principals are more than willing to work with our students.
So what are we, sorry.
And they've got shields and there are other
Yeah.
strategies that they can use to accommodate the student. But each one of those cases are handled differently. So if we have a case where there's a concern about that, if we're in a position to be able to know where it is, we can follow up and make sure that the administration is indeed making those accommodations. Because In a lot of cases they are. We may have a case or two out there where that's not the case, but if we don't know it, we can't correct it.
Right, yeah, and I just wanted to ask that, you know, that we are accommodating them, and so, and we're not just saying you must go virtual, we're gonna accommodate them for in-person, correct?
That would not be our automatic response, no.
Okay.
And so,
Special needs kids.
And I'm
no.
not talking about our I'm
Right.
not talking about
Oh,
that.
okay.
I'm not talking about that. I don't want some of the cases, I mean, scenarios that I just.
for those
told you about.
particular issues, again, we would encourage that somebody would contact us so we could also work with the administration. Based upon the conversations that I have had with principals and the principal meetings and the AP meetings and all of those things, I have not heard or seen and being at campuses, a resistance to our administrators working with particular students. And so if they would contact us, we would definitely begin to troubleshoot with that.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, I think that's all I have. Anybody else?
You all said, somebody said that you guys updated the color chart?
That is for the recess piece.
This is only for the recess piece?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
And again, this is just, as Dr. Randall mentioned, this is just through the end of this school year. This is not for the fall.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you. Page 149.
Yeah. Well, this is actually, the Board of Trustees will discuss and take action on the board self-assessment, and Madam President, that will be addressed on Thursday.
Correct.
The next item is consider approval of 2021-22 employee report end date table. And we ask that the Board of Trustees approve it as presented and begin and end dates for job titles as indicated on the table. Next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve Dell to provide services, hardware, and software to facilitate the district-wide computer refresh project not to exceed $6,706,718.
Okay, I do have a question for Mr. Jacobson on this. Actually, I have one question on this, and then D1, D3, and D4 all together. So they're about to go out and sell some of the 2020 bonds.
Yes.
And of that $21.5 million on Proposition D that passed for technology, this is going to spend $6.7 million.
Yes, sir.
So with the other two items, 9D3 and 9D4, it's going to be, of that $21 million, $11.8 million is going to be spent like that for technology upgrade. So basically half.
So the only one of the 5 technology items that is Proposition D is the computers. Everything else is network, so it was part of infrastructure, which is Proposition A.
Proposition A.
Yeah, D was very focused on end user devices. So that it's computers.
Proposition A was very large, and there's a
Yes,
lot
sir.
of things in. Okay, so here's my follow-up question to that. With the federal government basically devaluing our currency and giving money away to everybody and anybody, they're giving a lot of money to school districts through the CARES Act and other things that are coming down the pike. If we are reimbursed some technology money, would any of that go to, I basically want to know, can we take that money directly from the federal government that we're spending on technology now? Can we take that money once we get reimbursed and just put it straight to the bond debt?
I'm gonna look over my left shoulder and hope Jill's approaching.
Because I think that would, because the district is in sound financial shape, and I think that would be the responsible thing to do, if I understand all the pieces correctly.
And let me share before they even begin, is that there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not those funds are going to flow through to the school districts and not be supplanted at the state level. So let's understand, we may or may not get all of that flowing directly through to the district.
I understand.
That's correct, and there's currently 3 different stimulus packages that have been passed. The first one, the money that went to districts supplanted money that would have gone to the district. So that the district, correct me if I'm wrong, did not see a net increase. It supplanted dollars. It did not supplement. The second stimulus bill, the legislature is currently in session, and the legislature is in discussion of how to distribute that money to schools and districts. So we don't know if that's going to supplant or supplement. The same is true with the third stimulus bill. They have not even started to discuss that yet. So again, we don't know whether we're going to see a net increase or if it will be a wash. It all depends on the decisions that are made in supplement or supplant. Did I say that very?
You did a perfect job.
I don't want your job, but that's good.
You did a great job answering that.
But if
So-
it did navigate its way back to these particular expenditures, yes, we could reimburse the bond fund.
And what are other options that we could do with that money instead of paying off the debt?
Well, the propositions were specific, as to what we were gonna do, but it could expand those projects, or the funds could go to available savings, or, the available bond proceeds could also be used to pay down debt. If it
Well-
did in fact get back into the bond fund.
I would like to see this district pay off bond debt with it if we can legally, with all the earmarks and the strings that they put on it, because every time there's a extra bowl of money that Congress receives through some way, they don't go and pay off the debt, they go and start some new program. And I would not like to see us get in those kind of situations in the future, because I greatly respect the job you guys have done over the years, keeping us in good financial shape. And I think that would be the responsible thing, if we're able to, is pay off some of that debt.
As we receive notification from the state on how those funds will be distributed, we'll be able to start looking at those decisions. But until that's determined, it's just to be determined.
Gotcha.
May I ask a question too, that when COVID hit and we had to all go virtual, didn't we spend money to get more computers and more infrastructure? And where did that money come from? Did that come from general fund, or did that?
It was a combination of places, bond and general fund. And a lot of those claims are still in progress, so we have not seen the funds yet.
So if we get the money, it could go to reimburse ourselves for money we had to put out there to get ourselves level enough to take care of our kids during
Yes. it
the
would-
very trying
yes.
last few months of school. Okay.
It would go back to the source from where it came.
Because I thought that was what that money was supposed to be for. Okay. But again, I've been on lots of the Zoom calls and we don't know where that money's going.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, there's a correction, and I'll make the adjustment as I read through it. It's that we ask that the Board of Trustees approve PS Lightwave and Comcast to provide internet service for the district in the amount of $7,899 per month for 2 10 Gbps connections with additional bandwidth upgrade pieces per the contract as needed, and a monthly cost of $200 to Comcast for IP addresses. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the purchase of uninterruptible power supplies and services in the amount of $886,108.64, including optional items from Rocket IT. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the purchase of network switches, related components, and installation in the amount of $4,276,344.53 from Red River Technology. Next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve PS Lightwave to provide lease dark fiber and maintenance for all district use fiber in the amount of $16,379.42 per month for the first year and additional years per the contract. Madam President, those are the action items.
Thank you. Ms. Vossick, are there any public comments?
There are none.
Okay, so there are none, so we'll go over the information items. We'll have a presentation on the demographic update and then the campus climate survey.
Okay, so every February we receive a demographic report from population and survey analysts. Obviously with Winter Storm Uri, they were unable to join us in February, and they are popular across the state of Texas, and they are double booked for this evening with other demographic reports. So I'll give an update as a reminder to the public. We will post the demographic presentation and the full demographic report. That's the large binder that Mr. Hubenek has on his desk along with other trustees. It'll be online tomorrow for the public to view as well. So interesting, PASA came last year in February prior to the pandemic getting off the ground. And so we had a 3.9% growth rate for the previous year, which is actually an under projection from what PASA was expecting of about 320 students. Now that is for the October snapshot date. We've actually surpassed that expectation at this point in the school year. But again, they wanted to note that they released the report prior to the pandemic, and there's a little bit of a lag, but those students are coming. And when you look at a 57% increase beyond the projected housing acceleration in Fort Bend County, we're gonna be back on track in short order. When you look at the Region 4 area, Lamar CISD is currently the number 14 sized school district in the greater Houston area. And again, this is fall of 2019 TEA data. If you looked at our October snapshot information, you would see us there with that demarcation of 36,529. So we expect at next year's report will likely be around 11 or 12 in the greater Houston area in terms of size. Over the past 5 years in the Region 4 area, Lamar CISD is number 3 in numeric change, which is the number of students coming into our district. You see there that Katy is a little over 13,000 students over a 5-year period. Conroe about 8,400, and then we're right there at 6,800 plus students over a 5-year period. When you look at the fastest growing school districts in the state of Texas with more than 20,000 students, we rank number 4. We added 1,712 students. But when you look at the growth rate, which is that far right column, you'll see that we are at 5.1%. So our growth rate is actually the largest rate among those fast growing large school districts in Texas. Again, we talked about that 3.8% growth rate at the beginning and how that was a little bit of a dip thanks to the pandemic. But you see our growth rate over time from back in 2008, hovering around that 4% up to about 4.5. It was over 5% in the previous demographic report, and it's expected to continue to increase. When you look at the regional economy, this is the Houston metro employment. 365,000 jobs were lost from March to April in 2020. There was a 50% rebound in the greater Houston area on those jobs. We know mortgages right now, historically low rates, around 3%. Apartment vacancies are ticking up a little bit, and then 2020 home purchasing ended strong, as you can see there, up about 57%. Energy job losses were really in the Woodlands area in the northern Houston part of Houston. Local jobs, 6 million square feet of manufacturing and distribution space is currently under construction in that I-10 area between Katy and Brookshire, Ross, Costco, Domino's, and some other spec buildings. And the Texas Medical Center continues to expand as well. So beyond the Fort Bend County area, along I-10 and into Houston, jobs continue to pop up. When you look at the enrollment share in Lamar CISD, 38,284 resident students in the district. 36,519 of those students actually attend Lamar CISD. 477 transfers into the district. You see on this diagram here, less than 2% of students attend charter schools that could attend Lamar CISD. Just over 2% attend private schools that could attend Lamar CISD, and less than 2% attend a nearby school district. When you look at single-family housing, Lamar CISD now ranks #1 in the state of Texas for new housing starts. Over the past 5 years, it had always been our neighbors on the east side of the Brazos River, but we are #1 now, not just in Fort Bend County, but the state of Texas. You see there 4,500 plus housing starts in 2020 compared to just under 3,000 in 2019. So a lot of homes obviously coming into Lamar CISD. When you look at single-family developments, Tamarron remained #1 in Lamar CISD with 414 occupancies in the last 12 months, followed by Creekside Ranch at 287, that's right by Bentley Elementary, Veranda at 283 over near Hutchison, and Talavera at about 275, which is right next to Hubenack Elementary. Continuing with single-family housing, you look at the Fulshire area, there is a MUD 245, 700 age-restricted lots west of Polo Ranch. That's along 1093. That's, I believe, a Del Webb development. So that is really the epicenter of growth in the Lamar CISD, that 1093 Fulshire, Katy, Simonton area. But again, a lot of growth south. Beasley and Kendleton, there are some new develops down that way, along with some manufactured housing. And then in Rosenberg, Miller's Pond, and Baymore Farms continuing to add homes as well. So our demographic specialists would say we have multi-nucleated epicenters of growth, and that's their fancy way of saying a lot of fast growth districts have one area growing fast. We have many throughout Lamar CISD. As you can see here, this is through October 2025. So over the next 5 years, when you look at the yellow, orange, and red, those are the housing occupancies anywhere between 100 and 600 plus being developed. But then when you look 10 years out, you see a lot of those areas that were blue and green then turn yellow, and a lot of those oranges turn red. So you see really north of 1093 along the central area next to Foster, south of 59 over near Randall High School, south near Carter Culver, a lot of growth all throughout Lamar CISD over the next 10-year period. Quick snapshot of new single-family housing. As we mentioned, Tamarron is #1 over the next 5 years, but if you look at a 10-year projection, you see Jordan Ranch, and that is the development that's a Johnson development right up near I-10, near that Rooms to Go area, really in the Katy area, 2,301 homes over the next 10 years, followed by Cross Creek West. So if you know where Cross Creek is, and you go up 359, they're making some developments further west, completely in Lamar CISD, a lot of homes there. Tamarron West, an extension or expansion of the development near Tamarron. Candela is where the Color Spot Nursery used to be, over by Hubenack and Bentley. And I won't read them all off here, but you see we have a lot of developments and a lot of growth in Lamar CISD. When you look at projected new housing occupancies, just under 20,000 new homes in Lamar CISD over the next 5 years. And then again, right about 50,000 over a 10-year period. And so when you look at single-family housing, multifamily housing, senior living, mixed use, 54,707 places for individuals to live in Lamar CISD over a 10-year period. I often say for folks who are kind of numb to that, in 2014, we had fewer than 40,000 single-family homes in Lamar CISD from the old 300 until 2014. When you look at over 50,000 single-family homes over a 10-year period, it just continues to show and how we're reshaping Lamar CISD in Fort Bend County. When you look at current students, 39,171 students are expected next school year, and you see that rebound they talked about with the growth rate at 7%. That's an increase of 2,652 students. That would be the first time that we add more than 2,000 students in a single year, and based on their projections, we're not going to look back from there. As you can see, just under 50,000 students within 5 years, and then 65,400 students in 2030. This again is all off of the moderate growth rate right there, kind of slow and steady in the middle. You can see that again, if we're a little bit under, we're looking at about 48,000 in 5 years and 62. If we're over, obviously over 50 and just under 70,000 in 10 years, which is a lot of students in Lamar CISD. When it comes to long-range planning now, you can see here This is just everything on one page. We need 3 developments, elementaries in 2022 projected. You see the orange there, a couple of developments to the north and the south in 2023. We would need some relief up north in 2024 in the yellow. You see the green both in the north and the south in 2025, as well as some additional campuses in 2026 and another one in 2027. Then if you look at the left side of the screen, plus 1 additional school in the north, plus 1 additional school in the south. For those who don't read maps that well, you can see the chart here, essentially 14 new elementary campuses over a 10-year period, with 1 campus needed 3 times and then multiple campuses needed every other year. Looking here at middle school and junior high long-range planning, this particular slide is a bit difficult to read, but it does remind everybody what our secondary attendance boundaries look like with our different high school color tracks, secondary complexes. On this next page, you can see, though, looking specifically at middle schools, we appear to be looking good across the board with the exception of Roberts and Wertheimer. If you recall, the 7th high school in the 2020 bond would look to relieve students in the north, so likely would address this situation with over-enrollment in the north. And then right again, we've got 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students all there. So those numbers are a bit skewed as we'll have 3 different grade levels on one campus until we build the middle school on the silver track. When you look at junior high, same thing, Lehman in the purple track and Briscoe up in the gold track in the northern part of Lamar CISD. Those are the areas that will need relief with the 7th high school. And again, Wright will look a little bit different once we construct the middle school in that area. Again, showing you the attendance boundary zones for secondary and the high schools. A bit difficult to read, but when you click one more time, you can see a 10-year projection here for all of our high schools. You'll see once again, as we've stated before, Foster and Fulshear are the next area. And really when you look at how we've had our plan, we opened up Fulshear in the north, we opened up Randall in the south. Next year, then we'll likely go back to the north just to address the growth in Lamar CISD. And you can see the other high school campuses and what they look like. We will more than likely need to add an additional high school in our next bond cycle for high school number 8 and beyond. So that is an abbreviated version of the PASA demographic report. Again, it'll be posted online tomorrow, and we can take any comments at this time.
You did a great job, Dr.
Yeah.
I was about to say, you're just as good as PASA.
Better,
Well, they did all the work, so, you know.
Or
better, because he
You're-
really
you're
hits the
very
high
good.
point.
Thank
So our
you.
district really did not lose students, or so that we're not gonna have to worry about.
No, what it is so they make their projections annually at the October snapshot date. And so they said we're going to have estimated this many students by October. Then the pandemic hit. We've already surpassed that number here in March, what they expected in October. It was just kind of a lag. And so it was just a little bit behind schedule, but those students are already here right now. More students are in Lamar CISD today than they projected for October last year.
And I know you're probably referencing funding
Right.
piece, and like some districts lost large
Right.
numbers and were budget
And they're
impacts.
scrambling right now.
But that's not gonna impact us that way.
Right.
And it evidently, it's not impacting people coming here and buying houses and growing. 'cause-
No, you saw there, we're number 1 now with housing starts in the state of Texas. And so you just see all those developments. We're continuing to build homes in Lamar CISD, which ultimately leads to additional students.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll jump to the next one.
Oh,
And
he's
so
gotta
are
do
you doing the
both.
next one as well?
Yeah,
He's gonna put on
we're gonna
another
knock these
hat.
all out on
Are we gonna
Tuesday and
skip
we'll
or
be
something?
good. So we completed our campus climate survey as we do annually. This is a survey that we administer between the Thanksgiving break and the winter break, and we've had really good success. So this is a climate survey, kind of feeling, you know, what do things feel like on our different campuses in Lamar CISD? And it looks at different dimensions: academic preparation, student support, school leadership, parent engagement, safety, school operations. We added faculty relations and support and some areas there to address COVID-19 for this specific school year. So a total of 21,467 stakeholders participated in this year's campus climate survey, which is great considering the constraints of the pandemic. And again, over the past 3 iterations of the survey, we've had more than 20,000 stakeholder participants. So we're in line when it comes to participation there. When you look at the overall quality by participant group, you see parents on the top, campus-based staff, or the individuals taking the survey, and students on the bottom. 83% of our parents gave their campus either an A or a B. 81% of our campus-based staff gave their campus either an A or a B, and 73% of our students gave their campus either an A or B. They're always a little bit tougher to judge, right?
Right.
So when you look at these dimensions here, this particular slide here, dimension scores, comparison by participant groups. This is all of the areas: academic preparation, student support, school leadership, etc. Our parents are the green bar, our staff is the blue bar, and our students are the yellow bar. So in all of these different dimensions, particularly 17 areas could have been graded. We received 12 A's or B's from all the different stakeholder groups, and 5 C's, 4 of those coming from our students. When it comes to academic preparation by participant group, you'll see our parents in green and our staff members in blue. We ask questions such as, teachers set high learning standards for my child, high expectations are set for all students at this school, teachers give timely and helpful feedback, etc. You can see the feedback there from the parents in green and the staff members in blue. This is the student feedback on academic preparation, and we ask things such as, my teachers tell me what I need to know, how to do it well in school, I try to do my best in school every day, my teachers show me how our lessons relate to life outside of school, and that's the area probably in need of a little bit of practical application, but you see the feedback from our students there overall. Additional feedback from our students: tests and quizzes match the instruction I received, my teacher gave me extra help when I needed it, the course and activities offers at school are interesting. You see the feedback there with the green areas strongly agreeing, and the percentages from our students. When you look at student support, this is feedback again, parents in green, staff members in blue, students in yellow, and the verbiage changes for each one of these, but they put them all together. But there's a teacher, counselor, or other staff member to whom my child can go to for help with the school problem. You see the perceptions there from the different stakeholder groups, and they ask the same thing about a personal problem, about technology problems. And then there at the bottom, students at my child's school are treated fairly regardless of their race, culture, religion, sexual orientation, gender, or disabilities, and the feedback from the 3 groups as well. When you look specifically at our high school students, this is an area that we continue to try to work on when we ask our high school students about a principal, teacher, guidance counselor, college and career facilitator, giving them advice about scholarships, about college and workforce development programs. It remains about 50-50 on the feedback that we're getting from our students at the high school level. Additional student support, feedback here: I'm proud to go to this school, I have good friends at this school. This is all student feedback right here. I feel encouraged by my teacher to do the best I can. I have never considered dropping out of school, etc. Continuing here, this is campus-based staff. Students get the support they need for their academic and career planning. Teachers praise students for doing good work. Students try to do their best every day at the school. You see all over 80%. Teacher support and self-management, and this is, again, parents in green, students in blue. My child receives support that addresses his or her individual needs. My child's teachers are available when needed. My child adapts to change easily, and you can again see the feedback a little bit higher for parents versus the feedback from our student population in this area. When it comes to school leadership, the 2 comparison groups are parents in green and staff in blue. The principal makes decisions that are in the best interest of the students. You can see over 80% for parents and over 90% for staff feedback there. This is feedback right here specifically from staff members. The principal makes decisions that are in the best interest of students, over 90%. I know what the principal expects of me, etc. You see all the feedback there, fairly positive from our staff regarding their relationship with campus administration. This is parents, conversations with administrators. And the question on the left there, have you had an issue or concern to discuss with the principal or AP this year? 81% of our parents said no, they did not have an issue. Of that remaining percentage, you see the questions over on the right. Was he or she available to talk to you? 80% say yes. Was he or she courteous and listened? 80% say yes. Did he or she respond to your concerns? 80% say yes. And of that 19%, 66% say that they resolved their concerns ultimately. When you look at campus-based staff, same thing here. Their opinion of working with administrators 67% never had any issues with their campus administrator. Of the remaining 33% that did, you see, was he or she available to talk? Was they courteous? Did they respond to your concerns? And were they resolved? Of that smaller subset. Parent engagement. How strongly do you agree with the following? I am kept informed about my child's grades. 91% agree. And you see additional comments here about what's their child's learning in school, activities such as tutoring or after school. Teachers are available to discuss my child's learning needs. All across the board, fairly good. 74% and 76%. Teachers gave me useful information about how to help my child do well in school, and I am satisfied with the opportunities for me to be involved in my child's school. This is campus-based staff and their opinion about parent engagement. I regularly communicate with parents. Parents support me when addressing an academic problem with their child. Parents support me when addressing behavior issues. Parent input about student learning needs is respected and valued at this school, and parent input is used to improve instruction. You can see the feedback all over 80%, except for input at 77% from our staff members. Students, when it comes to parent engagement, you see my parent's guardian asked me about my day at school. 88% of students agree. My parent guardian participates in school activities with me. 60% agree or strongly agree. Parents communicate with teacher about how I'm doing. 69%. And then the last one there, parents helping with the homework. Over 83% agree and strongly agree. When it comes to safety, you can see all three groups again: parents in green, staff members in blue, and students in yellow. My child is safe at this school. I am aware of the standard response protocol. We were pleased with that one, specifically with the students at 91%, because when it comes to the SRP, it's really about whenever we call it, can you react quickly? So that was good feedback from our kids. Discipline is enforced fairly at my child's school. Teachers and students respect one another at this school, and my child is not bullied at this school. Again, students yellow, staff blue, and parents green. Safety continued. I feel safe from gang activity. This is just students. 79% agree or strongly agree. I have not seen a weapon in this school. 82% agree, strongly agree. I respect the teacher at this school. 89% of students agree or strongly agree. And I feel that other students are friendly at this school. 68% of our students either agree or strongly agree. We look at our bus drivers. 57% of our students say they do not ride the bus, while the remaining percentage does. You see over there, I feel safe when I'm on the school bus, 81%. I feel safe while waiting at the school bus stop, 85%. And my school bus runs on time most days. 70% of the students either agree or strongly agree with that statement. When it comes to school operations, again, you can see all three stakeholder groups. Parents are green, staff members are blue, and students are yellow. My child's school is clean. My child has the resources needed for its classes. My child's school is well maintained with working air conditioning and heat, adequate lighting, and well-kept grounds. Good feedback, all over 80% for that one with all three groups. Faculty relations and support. This is feedback specifically from campus-based staff. Collaboration is encouraged among teachers and staff at this school. I feel respected and supported by the principal at this school. I feel respected and supported by other teachers, and I enjoy working at this school. Good feedback across the board from our campus-based staff in Lamar CISD. When it comes to staff support, there is someone I can go to in my department school to help me with the work problem, with the personal problem, with the technology problem. My principal or direct supervisor is available when needed. They check on me on a regular basis, and this school has made the necessary updates to health and safety measures. You can see positive feedback across the board from our campus staff. COVID-19 pandemic response. So the question was, overall, how would you rate how Lamar CISD has handled the COVID-19 pandemic for the 2021 school year? 79% of our parents responded either excellent or good, and 67% of our students responded either excellent or good for just a comprehensive question. When you look at these questions here, this parents in green, staff members in blue, the district has maintained open lines of communication with parents. My child's school has maintained open lines of communication with parents. You can see again, good feedback from parents at that mid 80 point, and then staff at 71 and 79%. Educational experience for the fall of 2020. The far left circle is parents and the two on the right are students. Has your child participated in virtual learning during the 2021 school year? 45% say no, 55% say yes. You see there in the center, have you participated in virtual learning during this school year? 38% of students say no, and 62% say yes. And have you participated in on-campus classes this year? 28% no, and 72% say yes. So overall preparation for virtual learning, and this is a comparison group, parents in green, students in yellow. The overall process for virtual learning was clearly explained. Course expectations were clearly explained. Criteria for grading assignments were clearly explained. I feel comfortable using technology, which is Office, Canvas, or LMS, and my child's teachers were prepared. You see the feedback there from both of those groups. Again, parents in green and students in yellow, my child's teacher provided individual attention and support. My child's teacher was available when we had questions. My child was engaged in his or her courses, and my child's teacher was engaged in the courses. Overall preparation for on-campus classes. This is just students here. When you look at the graph on the left, have you participated in any on-campus classes this year? 72% said yes. And then over on the right from students, my school has made the necessary updates to health and safety measures. 81% agree, strongly agree. I am engaged in my classes. 83% agree, strongly agree. And my teacher is available when I need him or her. 86% of our students agree and strongly agree. So the next steps with the Campus Climate Survey, they will be posted online tomorrow. So this is a bit of a condensed version of the full district report. It'll be online, and then every single campus has an individualized campus climate survey result from the parent perspective, the student perspective, and the staff perspective. So anyone can dig in and look at it comprehensively like we did with the district or at a specific campus. And again, that should be posted tomorrow. And I'm happy to answer any questions about our surveys this year.
Any surprises?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think
It's pretty much how we've seen it in the past.
Right. I mean, I think it was good to continue to have over 20,000 individuals participate, considering some of the constraints of this school year. And I think as we continue to go through the school year, we always look to see, and we did our random 10 check-ins with parents throughout the year to get feedback about how is virtual learning going. You see there at that last slide, it seemed like students were kind of all on the same page mid-year, and so we continue to try to tweak that and make it any adjustments as we look at, you know, virtual learning for the remainder of this school year.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
I have a question that nobody else does. So the surveys are anonymous?
Yes.
Ish, because you can tell what campus they came from.
So the participants, it's anonymous, and this is again through a third-party provider, K-12 Insight, and so we help to communicate about this survey, but they give us the data back. So they combine everything for the district report, we post that, and they actually take the staff data and break it up, and then it's posted online as well. So obviously if you're a parent at a certain elementary or secondary campus and you take it, you'll be with that campus, but we don't know how individuals answered, and we don't receive that information from the third-party survey provider.
So they're required to fill out what campus, or somehow the survey knows what campus they're.
Right, and so part of that is that it's a campus climate survey, and so we at the district level and the board, we're looking at the comprehensive results, but the benefit really for our campus principals is they get to go in and see, you know, what's the feedback from our parents, what's the feedback from staff, and what's the feedback from students, and all of those different dimensions. And that really drives their work with their campus improvement planning and any professional development they want to do. Just make sure that, again, it's not just about the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, but we're making sure that our students and our staff members feel welcome and engaged and energized when they walk into our campuses.
So so is it up to each campus administrator or principal, I guess, how they decide to use the results?
Yes.
Or do we give them guidelines of, because if they got a low score somewhere and they, I mean, are they required to do something about it, or show results, or show some type of, how does that work?
It's not a requirement, but I do know that our academics department, elementary and secondary education, they also will look at the campus climate survey data when they're having conversations with staff. And so, you know, it's really just a snapshot of what it feels like on the campus. Our campus administrators, I know they utilize it. And oftentimes, even in, you know, interviews for individuals looking for different positions, they're analyzing the information. And so I think, you know, we get information from our state accountability system. This is something that, you know, we encourage our parents and our students and our staff to participate in. It's another piece of data. It's not, you know, the end-all be-all, But I do think when you get 20,000 individuals in our organization, give us some feedback, it does have some way to say what can we look at and try and make things better. But there's no expectation about a principal to do this or that. But certainly if you're at a campus that might be struggling, there might be some conversations looking at both the academic data and the campus climate survey.
So if a teacher fills this survey out with the expectations that it's going to help resolve anything that might be taking place with the administration, this is not the right tool for them, you're saying, because it's not necessarily going to be used to make any changes by this principal?
Well,
I would, excuse me, Mike, Dr. Rockwood. I would say that's correct, because you only have one person that may have an issue clumped with another 35 or 40 people. And so that one issue may not get done. There's another strategy for you to take if you really have an issue and you want it addressed. You don't wait a full year for the climate survey. You call it out. You get with the assistant soups and say, hey, I've got an issue here, and explain what that issue is.
But to your point, Ms. Williams, if a principal looks at their campus climate survey, or the academics department looks and they see an area that is extremely low, or just, in the wrong area, they're definitely looking at that and trying to make improvements. This isn't something that is just put on the shelf. There are a lot of conversations around our campus climate surveys, which is why we post them for everyone to see. And so, all principals can see the campus climate surveys at every other campus. All parents can see that, students as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you want to give another presentation? Or you
That's it for tonight.
He needs a drink of water.
And Madam President, if there aren't any other questions about any of the information items, then we are complete with the information items.
Thank you.
I do have one on A1, 10A1, the freezing of the intra-district and inter-district transfers. I don't really understand what that is. Just curious. I mean, I think I do. I think it's self-explanatory, but I'm not 100%.
What's your question?
What is the freezing, and why is that taking place?
When we're looking at the freeze, it's when we are looking at the population of those campuses. And so we don't want to add any more else to those groups because the population of that campus is almost at capacity.
It's for transfer.
For transferring in, not your attendance group, not your attendance boundary kids, and not even employees. So the 4 things that are cited in there are things that are not referring to the policy. But if I have a situation, or we have a situation, where a campus, we don't want to add any more to that particular campus because then it's going to overload that particular campus. And so we look at both the demographic report and the enrollments of that, and then they make the decisions, we make the decisions at that point as a result of that. Does that help?
Yeah.
If a kid moves into that area and lives there physically, they go to school there. But if I'm wanting to transfer my kid there, the cap is already in place, and I can't do that.
Unless you teach there, and then that's part of the perk.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any other information questions? Okay, then we are not going into closed session this evening. So it is 8:48 p.m. We are, meeting is adjourned.
We are closed.